Okay, so we're at the end of our project now. All we really need to do now is just go in there and finish up adding the sound and adjusting that kind of stuff, and we should be pretty much done. Um, so again, like just by way of thinking about, well, how do I add sound? We already added this audio track. I'm sorry, down here from out of our like iTunes library or whatever. But maybe you just want to use like some sound from one of your videos, but not the image itself, just the sound. So one way you could think about doing that is to add a track over the top, right? And then we would just unlink them. So go in here and click on that and go to unlink. And then instead of, usually we delete the audio track, but this time let's delete the video out of there. So now if I go into my, and I push play, I'm going to get whatever's on the So I'm going to get the sound that's down here as well as whatever is underneath that down here. So if you want to, you can always adjust like what you're looking at. So if you're going to work more on audio, you can actually crank this up so that you see more of these waveforms down here than you do the other ones. And you know, you can kind of see that it could be that what I really want is I want like this section of the audio where there's some, I think this is about where the drone takes off, right? And so if that's the case, I could just kind of drag this down and move it until the waveform gets a little closer, but it doesn't really like doing that, right? So I'm going to have to do, again, my slip tool, I'm going to have to drag that down. It still won't let me. Let's see here. What I could do is just go with the razor, right? And click on it like that. And then grab my black arrow tool and delete that first little chunk, and then move this down. All right, so a little bit closer now. And if this, if I don't want to hear this, I can mute that track. Just hit the M button, and I can mute that one, so I won't hear it. And then all I'm going to hear is the sound of a drone taking off, right? And it could be that's kind of cool, but maybe I want it more than one. So why can't I just copy that? So if I hit Command C and then Command V down here, I should have copied. Oops, let's see. Copy that to the end of that other track, but I can grab it with the black arrow tool and move it down to underneath there. So now I've got, if I want to, I can have both of those crazy drone things taken off kind of at the same time. So that's one way to go about doing this. If you wanted to really kind of play around with the sound, right? So, but what I'll probably do for this one is I would like to make this sound kind of like louder. I'd like to kind of adjust this track, and you can see this is your waveform here. If you ever want to kind of double click on it, it'll show up here. And then this over here is kind of your meter, and so you can see that it's at a certain decibel. And if I just click and drag that, I can crank it up a little bit higher and see if I can get the sound, get it a little louder, right? And what you don't want to do is you don't want to peak out. You don't want it to go up into the red up here. And so yeah, okay, so maybe that's about perfect, right? So if I go back here, and that's the way I want this thing to start, I can do that. And then let's say I'd like to ramp my I'd like to ramp it from being like kind of a straight thing, and I'd like to kind of fade it, and then I'd like to have the musical soundtrack come up. So again, I can come back in here to my effects controls, and you can see you have your volume there, right? And I can actually change the level, and I can keyframe it. So if I click on the keyframe button right here, and again, it helps sometimes if you just zoom in so you can actually see what's going on. I can keyframe it there, and then if I just keep going down the timeline, I can actually keyframe it again and just kind of like drop the decibels of that down a little ways so that now it's not quite so loud. So let's see. So that's barely, you could barely hear that, right? So if I want to, I can even like fade it all the way out by adding another keyframe here on the level, dropping it down like that, and then it'll be pretty much gone. Won't hear any of it. Then I can add another keyframe and I can ramp it back up at a certain point, like this if I want to. So you can play around with the sound as much as you want to, however you think you need to, and just kind of have some fun with it. So so now that that's the case, I've got that sort of set up, and maybe that's a little too loud, so maybe I'll drop that keyframe down just a touch here. And usually people like to kind of ramp into their sound, so they'll add a keyframe here and then another keyframe here and drop it so it's real low. So now when we start, kind of ramps in real nice, and then it'll ramp out at the end and sort of slowly fade away. So what I probably want to do is I want to go back to this track and I want to unmute that. I want to see what do these things sound like together. So let's see how it starts here. So probably right about there where that waveform hits is probably where I'm going to want to start my, I'm going to want to make my sound on this track kind of come up. So again, I'm just going to grab the black arrow tool, select that. I'm going to go up here to level. I'm going to keyframe there. And then I'll go back to the start and I'm going to keyframe that again and go back to 0. I crank it way down so it's almost gone all the way. Pull it down as far as I can. So now it should start silently, and there you go. Now we got it. You can see over here in that thing, it's peaking a little bit, which isn't maybe what I want, but that's okay. We can kind of have, we can play around with this. This is just sort of for fun. And then I would probably go to the end of my clips, right? I'd go all the way to the end of this whole thing. And if I knew that my film was going to end here, I would ramp out all of that sound and ramp it down and end it. And then I'd be ready to go. I'd be able to export this thing and get it all set and ready. So in addition, though, however, there are also all these effects that you can add. So if you want to, you can go in here and go to your media, or I'm sorry, go to your effects, and you can see that there are a ton of audio transitions and audio effects. So you can, if you want to do clips together and have them fade from one to the other, you can do that under the audio effects, or you can also go to audio transitions where they fade. Crossfading is probably the main one. But if you grab one of these and add it to, say, this, now whenever we listen to our music, you can go in there and really play around. Canyon echoes. You can see it's peaking out over there, which isn't so good. You want to try and avoid that. So there are just so many things that you can do. Go on and on as much as you want to. Again, if I don't want that, I'll just delete it and get rid of that effect. You can also pan back and forth between left and right. There's a lot of stuff here. I'm going to let you guys, we'll leave you here and let you play. Just don't get too distracted. Again, if it's your first video, just try to make it good. And then we'll come back and we'll work on exporting now and getting it all ready to turn in.